All right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Glad you could be here for this session with Richard Wiltshire from the Australian Computer Society and CloudWorks as part of our WorksFest initiative. We got probably one, I'm obviously biased, but maybe one of the best digital projects ever to go live in 2023-24 to talk about today. Really exciting stuff if you're in this space. It's a big call, I know, but just before we do kick off, a couple of housekeeping things. So firstly, before we start, I want to give my acknowledgement to country. So CloudWorks acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I am here on the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation today in Sydney, but welcome from wherever you are joining from. So this is WorksFest. WorksFest, if this is the first session you've been to, I'm glad to have you here. It's a week-long event that CloudWorks is running alongside our friends at Salesforce, talking all things projects, our customers, and really focusing on the new innovation, particularly around generative AI and data that Salesforce has been rolling out. My name is Jared. I work at CloudWorks. I'm an account director here. I'll be your host today. Last 10 years, my job has been working with people just like Rich, our customers, to kind of assist them on their digital kind of transformation journey, both big and small. CloudWorks is a company. We work across Australia and New Zealand, leveraging Salesforce technologies as well as a bunch of other stuff to help our customers do their job better. I'm just going to kind of change slides here. What I want to do is allow you to ask some questions across the session. So there's a Q&A button down the bottom. As we get down in deep, you can use that button to ask anything you want of Rich or myself. Probably not me, to be fair. And we'll get to that at the end. We should have time for 10 minutes or so of questions. Keep those things coming. Today is going to be something special. I'm really excited to have Rich here, the CIO of ACS. Rich is responsible for all things technology at ACS, along with working amongst an incredible team of people that I've had the privilege of knowing for over a year now, shaping up projects and driving things forward. A really rich history at the ACS, so we're really excited to be partners with them. So, Rich, welcome to WorksFest, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Jared. Great to be here and great to share the stories with everyone today. Hopefully, we are going to live up to the best transformation ever. We'll see how we go.
Well, no pressure, mate. So let's see how we go. So before we start, can you tell me a little bit about what I'm using the acronym ACS? People might not know what I'm talking about. Australian Computer Society. What does the Australian Computer Society do, and why do you exist?
Yeah, we're a membership-based organisation, so our members are IT professionals. Our key focus is accelerating growth across the IT industry, providing members with the right tools, skills, education and knowledge, and also recognition within their individual careers within IT. We have a number of programs that run within ACS. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is around skilled migration, which is a government-sponsored scheme to ensure that we fill the skills gap within Australia and IT.
Your role, more specifically, CIO, Chief Information Officer, Chief Intellectual Officer, whatever you want to call it. How's that work at the ACS?
Yeah, Chief Information Officer is the role. I'm also responsible for the transformation, so there is an element of Chief Transformation Officer as part of that, in my spare time. I guess my role, I work across the CEO, the board, and our executive, overseeing all digital projects as well as the business as usual. My team consists of project managers, architects, process engineers, BA, Scrum Masters, developers, etc.
Yeah. Favorite part of your job?
I actually love working in a skilled migration industry. I never thought I'd be part of the industry itself, but certainly working within the IT industry, for the ACS within the IT industry, it's great to get an advanced look at all the new and cool things coming at the moment.
as a projects professional, I guess, for 10 years doing this kind of work, I feel like all of the really great projects have a deeper meaning to them or a deeper purpose to them than just, can you get from A to B faster or more efficient, or can you move this widget or this metric in the business a little bit? There's something a little bit more behind it, and this felt like one of those projects. There's taking an existing way of working, and by making it easier, faster, better, you're improving people's lives in a way. But this one really had quite all those elements to, like, if we were able to be successful, it was going to make a real dent in a lot of areas, and this thing really needed to exist. So, can you tell us a bit about what were we trying to improve? So what was the program or process that we initially took on? But tell us a bit more about why this was chosen as our first major project together.
Yeah, chosen's an interesting term. Look, the platform had been aging. Within ACS, we had a number of challenges within our organisation, particularly around technology, a bit like the plumber's bathroom or the mechanic's car. Internally, our technology wasn't in a terribly fit shape. So when we did look across the entire landscape of technology, we did see the skill migration path as, I suppose, a big program to sink our teeth in. I guess you could say we had big, hairy, audacious goals to transform, and that looked like the best opportunity to get a result early.
Yeah. Okay. And what from a technical lens, right, do you think made this a challenging project, or what was the things that made this something that we needed to tackle? What were the challenges with the existing setup?
So I think outside the membership process in our organisation, skilled migration was probably the most intricate and complex function that we had. That complexity arises out of really a generally wide array of IT professionals, each with specific criteria and regulations as part of the migration path. Both internally and externally, we also faced many challenges within the platform. User experience, long times to process, and it was really fit for the first cab off the rank for transformation. However, we did realise very early on that while we've got a great BAU team, we don't necessarily have the capability to transform at scale. And this is a significant undertaking for ACS as an organisation. So we absolutely needed to partner with organisations such as yourself and partners in Helium for our Adobe practice, and from a user experience perspective, Blue Egg, which was a massive eye-opener for us, and bringing that user experience lens into design and architecture from the get-go.
So because what we were trying to do, I'm not sure how many years old the system is that we were kind of trying to replace. You could argue that it was actually kind of fit for purpose over time, and almost like the layers of paint in a building, just kind of painting over and over eventually. And our listeners have probably been in this situation before if they've done any sort of IT work, is that it doesn't have to be necessarily wrong or a bad system, but once you get over a decade or two old, technology's come a long way, and it gets harder and harder to fix on the run. Can you tell us a little bit about what were those kind of metrics that we started with that we knew we needed to improve to make this successful?
Yeah, so processing times, and this is right across the industry as well. I think all the other industry professionals organisations are facing the same problem. Our processing or application completion times were out to 18 weeks. So that's from when we first submit, or when an applicant first submits an application, right up until they get the end result. So 18-week processing time for that. A key metric within the organisation, we call that application readiness. And that is the application is ready to go directly to an assessor first time round. Our completion rates were sitting at around 15%. So only 15% of those applications were ready first time round. It has been a decade since this platform was originally built, or since the original platform was built. And yes, many layers of paint put onto that as well. But really, 2024, there's much better tools and much better ways of doing things. Look, I think from a technology perspective and also a cybersecurity perspective, there was a need for better fraud prevention. And in improving these areas, like the general goal was to improve these areas to make sure that the user experience was much better than it currently was. The old system being little more than a paper-based form with long.
Sometimes the paper was upside down. I remember that the way that the scanning tool worked.
Yep.
You know, people were turning their computer upside down, weren't they, to try and read half of the application forms?
Yeah.
Challenge, no doubt.
Oh no, some interesting conversations from a BAU perspective. We had people calling and saying, "Hey, I need a monitor that I can pivot 180 degrees so I can read documents." Why are we not accepting the documents the right way? So yeah, a lot of things in the way there. From an application perspective, a user experience perspective, we really set out to improve that significantly. And I think the comment that I made very early on is the platform must be as easy as ordering Uber Eats. And the basis for that being, everyone knows how to use Uber Eats. If you can't use Uber Eats, you're going to struggle with our platform. Everyone can use that. You should be able to use our platform.
It's such a good analogy, because I remember, well, we had to do that research. You mentioned UX, which we'll touch on again, like the user experience for your applicants. These are people coming from all sorts of countries around the world, English not their first language, and it had to be, you know, so accessible.
Yep.
That there was no incomplete applications or failed applications, even worse, because the system was too hard to use, right? Like that can't be the reason. It had to be, you know, if you weren't able to be successful, it had to be because you weren't fit for purpose for that particular application you were making, not because it was too difficult, which I think was, you know, definitely a risk.
Yeah, look, our partners at Blue Egg really opened my eyes on user experience and driving user experience as your fundamental goal to getting an easy to use, sleek platform with low friction in place. And terms such as iconography, which were new to me at the time, but I understand the ethos around it. And while sometimes you can't provide the right language to people that speak many different languages, you can provide the right iconography in there so that our applicants can understand the journeys that are required of them.
I did want to touch for our listeners on the architecture we were working with, right? So, you know, you were a Salesforce customer when we first met, but it's similar to the paint, I guess, example, the house example, and it had 17,000 shades of pink, purple, and blue over the time, and some wallpaper as well. What did we, you know, give us an overview of that solution design that we ended up with? So what kind of technologies are we talking about making up the new design that we're now live with?
Yeah, we did inherit a bit of a shaky foundation within ACS. A lot of our systems had been in many years. The skill migration platform is well over 10 years old. But so too was a lot of the technology within the environment. So our Salesforce platform was a little bit shaky. It had a lot of paint over it over the years. And we very early on realized that we're not going to be able to transform on the existing platform, and we do need to build out a new foundation, particularly in the Salesforce area.
And that's not uncommon, right? Like we see that once it gets over 10, 15 years old, most things need the liquor paint analogy. Like it doesn't quite work anymore, right? There's nothing wrong with what was built, but over time it just becomes difficult to keep innovating on.
It does. It actually makes it harder to innovate. So I don't know, it's 6 of one, a half dozen of the other, whether we took the right decision to sort of build a new Salesforce at the time and transform at the same time, or whether we should have transformed and then build. But we took on that challenge, and I think we've got a nice foundation to sort of continue our transformation objectives over the next few years as well.
People in there, Mike and Kelvin and others that we worked alongside with our program architects, looking at what's the best mix here, right? So, and going out to the market, looking at other integration platforms, what was best. We were really pleased. Obviously MuleSoft was something that you guys wanted to continue with, and obviously that platform became a lot bigger as a result of this project. But you did a similar thing with Adobe too, right? So I don't want to sugarcoat this project for our listeners, but you did an Adobe replatform at the same time, right? Experience Manager.
Yeah, so it has been an interesting journey. I guess back to the start, we did absolutely review the opportunity to greenfields. A new platform doesn't come around every day, so we absolutely took the opportunity to review the technology. We realized early on that Salesforce is the right platform for us, as we compared right through the market, but we needed to build new. MuleSoft was a little bit different. We went to market, we compared all of the vendors and really rolled back to Salesforce because we had a lot of institutional knowledge in it, and there was no real benefit in shifting that platform out. It just needed, we'll use that paintbrush analogy in that area. Our website, which has been problematic for a number of years, was sitting on servers, sitting in the cloud somewhere. And I guess before we could really transform, we did need to move that and upgrade that onto a new platform as well. So before we even got started on the meat and potatoes of the transformation itself, we had to build a new solid, viable foundation to move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, interesting. Other customers who are going through something similar, might choose to do. Every business is different. I think what we had to do. We had a bit of a burning issue. We had to replace your most significant, or most complex program up front. Obviously now we're going back and looking at the other parts of the business, but it also gave you a chance, I guess, to look at technologies that didn't even exist 5, 6, 10 years ago. And add them to what used to have to be customized in a platform like Salesforce or others.
IDverse was a really interesting thing for us. From a fraud and I guess a security perspective, we did need to collect a lot of sensitive information to be able to do skills assessments. And
because we're talking passports, birth certificates, drivers, like a lot of stuff to go through this process, right?
And there's a couple of elements to that. The first, how do we maintain that data securely? And the second, is it even accurate? So something like IDverse coming into the fray allowed us to, I think, first and foremost, not store that data in any further. So that removes that security honeypot that could have been problematic. But also we've taken that, I suppose, KYC check, so your customer check at a banking level, to the next level. So it's really cool tech. We're validating actual physical passports, doing selfies and whatnot to validate that the person is actually the person they say they are. But those sorts of technologies, actually, let me backtrack. Our environment was quite monolithic. Everything was sort of tied together, and we've re-architected our new environment in more or less a modular approach. So we've got a core in CRM, a Salesforce platform, and that we're able to bolt in through MuleSoft lots of new applications. So rather than hard coding in and systems and functions, we're now able to get off the shelf platforms and bolt them in and get them working. So I think IDverse, DocuSign, I mean, there are a couple of really good platforms that we've been able to sort of wire in and have had a real impact on fraud prevention.
It's such a good opportunity. Another reason that people should look at this replatforming approach is because you can do that. And all of our larger customers now are trying to take this modular approach, because what's good today, it might not be what you want in 5, 6 years' time. But you have to re-architect and rebuild everything just to replace a identity verification tool in your system. Nightmare, right? And again, I think sophisticated middleware allows you enterprise architecture like that. And then a big shout out to our architects and yours that created this in the way that they were looking to the future, not just today. those hard metrics that we wanted to do, just to summarize. So we had 18 weeks. We wanted to get under 15 days for the application process.
Yep.
We wanted to get the readiness rate, which was hovering around 15 to 20%, to over 80, which, so that means basically without any manual intervention, an applicant can put their all their documents through, get the whole thing assessed, and get to the end without something going wrong, which is obviously a lot, more efficient as well for your people, not having to touch things. And then we had a little bit of a harder metric to measure, but we wanted to enhance the fraud protection side of things. So IDverse and other biometric things to prevent, people being able to apply that won't themselves really, or mix different personalities together in one application. So, and then I think we had a goal of getting the steps down to 30 from over 100.
Yeah, from over 120 something, I think it was, yeah.
Now let's talk about the human side of it. We talked about the user experience, before. What are some of because we don't want to be all hard line about, metrics here, metrics there. I think they're very important, but there were other things at play here. And what were some of the harder to measure but equally important reasons that we took, that this process or project took on as areas for improvement?
Yeah. Our end users, our applicants, our customers needed to be really considered within this approach. There has been, and I've heard it many times in many organisations, we're not saving lives here. I think through skilled migration, while we might not be saving lives, we're actually making them much, much better, right? So there are people that are shifting their entire families from the country that they reside in into Australia to seek a better life. There's also people that don't have an option. They're persecuted or whatever. And they've got the right skills to be able to make a difference in another country. And they're shifting countries as well. So understanding their experiences and the reasons why they're moving into the country was as important as designing a new platform itself. So making sure that we don't contribute to the pain that they otherwise have in what is a long, complex, and probably frustrating experience running through immigration was really a key objective of ours, to get that frictionless, slick Uber Eats experience into our platform so they can move through us and then on to the next steps on their journey.
Tell me a bit about the timeline of this transformation. So, from initial concept and design and what was it like? And was there anything that surprised you that you learned along the way in terms of the effort, in different areas of the project? Because you mentioned biggest thing the ACS has done 60 odd years. So yeah, give us an indication on what you learned there.
Yeah, so entire transformation was 18 months start to finish, which is a significant period of time to be invested on any project, really, let alone something that is upending the entire organisation. Bit of breakdown on that. So 6 weeks was really around the planning phase, followed by 12 weeks of implementation. I think before that, we'd also done a couple of months of business process mapping to understand right across the organisation how skills processing works within the organisation. Testing, and you're touching on surprise. Testing was something that really surprised us. We realised very early on that we needed a longer testing phase, and I think that is because this platform needs to be right because we are impacting people's lives. But B, it was so transformative from the current platform, from the existing platform, that all of our staff needed to get their heads around it and comfortable with it to enable the go live. Because what we didn't want to do is launch the platform and then have people at the other end and not know how to use it. So a large change management piece came through with that extended testing phase. And then, of course, our go live, because of the way skilled migration is constructed, there are agents within the ecosystem. And we're able to reach out to some friendly agents and go live, more or less a soft launch with them, just to make sure that we had the system right before we turned it on and went live.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think that a lot of people underemphasize the planning phase. You know, we're not talking about design, but talking about reprocessing and engaging as many people as we can. So obviously we engaged internal people. We had a committee of people at your end that had to do this the assessors and also the case officers. And then, you know, Blue Egg did a lot of research with the applicant side, making sure that we understood what they needed or the agents. So that upfront phase crucial, right? You can't just get straight into it, but obviously the build was the build, but then that testing, you know, having every organization's different. How are we going to make sure this works internally, that our applicants can do it? And then just because they can do it, like, how hard is it? Like, what kind of training, collateral, or material are we offering them? So I think that front end and the front and end of a project, like often people skimp on and then wonder why things didn't go to plan. I think it's a good lesson to make sure that you don't underinvest in those areas.
Yeah, it's more or less I think we coined it a top-down, bottom-up design. So top-down coming from the applicant and the agent experience, the bottom-up coming from a technology and an internal functional process. We sort of grabbed those two elements together, then washed it with human-centered design theories and whatnot, and threw that into the wash to sort of build out the initial concept before we jumped into construction. And then obviously with a platform this broad, we had an enormous amount of stakeholders that were involved in that too. So we get all of their feedback and their views on how best to run a platform.
So before we jump into some of the staggering kind of results of this project, I want to talk about something that you mentioned at the top as maybe big lesson learned internally, but maybe almost the most critical part of the project being successful, and that was the user experience side. So how do we, you know, what have you and the organization learned from taking a UX and CX led approach?
The human-centered or UX design-centered experience-led philosophies that we kicked off with were quite contentious internally within the organization to begin with. I just want my function to be able to do X, Y, and Z. But I guess we'd already spoken about the impact it has on people, so that was really key for us. In fact, I think in a couple of areas, we took the human-centered design approach to and held that within a higher regard, even at the sacrifice to some of our internal processes, just to make sure that the people who are using the platform are happy with it and it does what it needs to do.
So an example of that would be if the applicant can do something in 1 or 2 clicks, but it means 3 or 4 for me, rather than the other way around. That's the approach we take. Like, let's make it easier for them. Even though we did reduce the steps at the back end a lot anyway, if there was a choice to be made, we choose the user, right?
Exactly, and that's something that we find missing in a lot of work all through the industry. Is we're focused insular instead of focusing outwards to our customers. So yeah, quite interesting approach and some interesting conversations around that. And I'm glad to say that we've got an exceptional user experience on the front end at the moment. So
we want to talk a little bit about the results.
Yep.
I'll ask you about some of the hard things in a minute, but before then, I want to dive into the results. So we had some metrics at the start. How have it gone? Because I think we went live in March, soft launch Feb, maybe live in March. So it's a few months now. Often our customers need a year before they can tell us, or 6 months before they tell us the true result of a project. But we're lucky in this element. A lot of them have come through already. So give us a bit of a rundown of how it's going.
Yeah, I guess the cool thing about building out a foundation is we can also build out a foundational data platform. We can come back with real-time statistics. So our initial goal to turn around our 18-week processing timeline into a 15-day window, we're about 8-10 weeks in, and we're well within that window. We're getting a lot of
so you've got that down. 18 weeks is now
18
2 to 3 weeks on average.
Yep, and getting a lot of them through in that 5 to 10 day window, which is absolutely fantastic. From an application readiness perspective, we had a very audacious goal of getting that from 15% to 80%. And I think at week 9, we surpassed 80%. We're sitting at about that 85%. So that means
85% no touch.
No touch. So that means 85% of all of those applications can come straight through the system and get processed by an assessor first time
And
round.
to put that into context, last year you did 40,000 applications.
Exactly. Yeah. And that may have been a key contributor to why there was such a significant backlog and the delays that were within the system. I think one of the sort of more internal statistics was, metrics was sort of outcomes. So applicants now have 4 times more chance of getting a positive outcome. That's based on the logic that we put into the and I guess from a process perspective, we've dropped 127 processes down to about that 25-30 mark. So a fairly significant transformation from a metrics perspective. Applicants are no longer sitting there and waiting for months effectively to find out where their applications are. And of course, with all the work that we've done from that user-centric design perspective, we've now got portals. So we've got high touch, high interaction throughout the process. So if there is something missing, it's a very quick touch point to reach out to the applicant and get the final piece of data.
A lot of automation in that, right? So like something's not quite right, we can automate a message to the applicant. They can go self-serve,
Yep.
load the document. Maybe it was missing something, and off we go. And you know, you're as a ACS is a not-for-profit, member-based organization. So, we're not going to talk about commercials or anything, but to have something go from 18 weeks to 2 or 3 weeks, from 15% no touch to 85% no touch, huge efficiency gains and therefore cost saving gains, right? Like on the process itself. What's the industry? You're one of many skilled migration
Yep.
agencies across the country that do this, for IT sector, but there are others. What's the industry feedback like? You have a voice at government in certain areas, and you have peers that you talk to. How's this compared to an industry standard? We have the ACS before and after, and what's the feedback been like?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I touched on it before. All industry are challenged with the same problems that we have with government contracts that were 10, 20 years old on old and aging systems. And it's a fairly problematic environment. So I've done a bunch of talks around the industry peers. And I guess my view is we're now setting the standard within this. And interestingly, the government is now also looking at the standards within these contracts, and it's very carefully aligned. Maybe a coincidence or maybe purposeful, very aligned with the platform that we have. So making sure that there is high touch with applicants on the way through, that we're processing applications in a timely manner, and that there's high quality and high fraud detection in place. So there is definitely coming down the line a lot of change in the industry.
Well, seriousness, like the country itself, Australia is a huge country with a very small population. Unemployment's super low, and not just IT workers, but there are all sorts of skills out there that we're kind of begging for, and I'm sure the government wants it done correctly, humanely, with people at the center of it, but accurately and without fraud, right? And cost effectively. Like that's
and quickly, So
and they don't want 100,000 skilled workers across all the different industries sitting there waiting in line when they could be working, here filling vacant roles. It's incredible. Okay, just to finish off, we're kind of running out of time here. I'm going to ask you what did you learn?
Yeah, I guess first of all, you got to have the right people on the team. So if you're not geared up to transform, because BAU people are very different to a transform people, go out to the right partners. I think that's probably the best decision that we made. A lot of people are excellent at BAU, and you also need to keep those people within the organisation as well. So you do need to have some skin in the game. So it's not outsource everything. You do need to blend that approach. So institutional knowledge has to stay within the organisation after a project's run. I think that's probably the key for me. Yeah, let's leave it at that.
Yeah, man, I think it's a good point. Getting the balance right between responsibility on your external partners, like a CloudWorks, where you guys are now is an incredible space to be. And we talked about at the start, the easiest way to learn how to do projects is by doing projects, right? Both of you and I don't mind our analogies, and we don't mind running long distances.
Yep.
And you don't get better at watching running videos.
Absolutely.
Right? Or reading about it, or having
Data
someone to tell you about their run. Like, you put the shoes on and you get out the bloody door.
Yeah, yeah.
And you guys got out the door. And you know,
and that's a hard thing to do, right? So there's a lot of fear involved in getting out that door, particularly when you're challenged with our history was a bunch of small projects, and now we're going to tackle a large part of the organization. So that's a big goal to take. But yeah, you absolutely need to rip that band-aid off and go for it.
As we finish up, what's the some of the pearls of wisdom you might share with business leaders or CIOs?
Transformation is hard, and the only way to transform is to rip that band-aid off and go for it. You do need people on the bus, so you need absolute support right across your key executive and your board. Invest heavily in CX, in human-centered design. I can't speak highly enough of the results that we got out of that. So really strong partnerships as well. We've touched on that before. Make sure you've got the right partners, you've got the right people doing the right things. Essentially, get everyone on the bus. You'll get rocks thrown at you. There'll be challenging times, but pull back to what the strategic intent of the deliverable is, and just keep refreshing. So change management is a key part of that. Make sure you've got a strong change manager on board. And then finally, balancing technical solutions with user-friendly approaches. And I think we've spoken before about that: people, process, technology. It's in that order. So you need to identify the right people, identify the right processes or the processes that you need within the organization, and only then touch the technology. You can, of course, bring more value from a technology perspective to the people and process, but you have to start with the people and process first.
The questions from the audience coming through, and thanks guys for putting those in there. One of them that's come through is, what would you do differently?
I think I'd probably sit with our board and really challenge them. Are they ready to embark on digital transformation? Because it's not an easy journey. We continually had them saying, is it done yet? Can we do it cheaper? Can we do it faster? And to reap the value that we got out of the platform, we had to stay the course, and some challenging conversations happened along the journey. So absolutely getting them on board early and making sure that they're all committed to the cause.
Another question's come through. Advice to other organizations and CIOs on what to do now that you're 18 months in. Sorry, what not to do. I've read it wrong. I need more skills assessment.
We need to run you through skills assessment and then come out and tell you that you need glasses. Look, I think what not to do. It's probably about what to do as well. Make sure that you've got your foundations right, and those foundations are both in technology and organisation. We came across many governance instruments within the organisation that stopped us moving at pace. You need to focus on all of that sort of stuff first.
Those watching at home, this is the final client session. I think we've got one more live session tomorrow. But if anyone's been watching this and you want to, you've missed a few, want to catch up, you can scan this QR code, or as part of your registration today, you'll get an email which gives you links to the other sessions that we've run over the course of the week. There's some really cool stuff. Tomorrow at 4:30, we do have a really cool session around data and AI and how we look at data differently. So please register for that. You'll be sent a link. And yeah, finally, Rich, thank you again. And everybody, thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon. I hope you had a good time. See you soon.